So hello and welcome. So we failed to, for some reason, get Robyn on the agenda, but my partner in crime, Robyn Emery, will also be presenting today. So first, I think I know many of you, but maybe not all of you. So my name is Lisa Hancock. I am a certified peer support specialist with Optum Salt Lake County. I've been doing this work since 2014. I first started with Salt Lake County Felony Drug Court and then moved in with Optum in January of 2017. I love what we do. Like Heather mentioned, peer support, I also view that as hope. We give people hope that recovery is possible. And the work that we do is extremely powerful. And as we move into talking about ethics and professionalism, as Heather mentioned too, and as it's on the agenda, this is a refresher course. So for some of you, this may be new information, but for many of you, it will be, right, a refresher training. We have added some new information. To hopefully well equip ourselves with ethics and professionalism. Those that have taken our training know that ethics and professionalism holds a dear spot in my heart and is very important to me. As many of you know, right, the stigma around addiction and mental illness is still lurking out there. And so we need to hold ourselves, right, in a different light, right? Because there's the culture of recovery and there's still the culture of addiction. And so with that ethics, it's really moving more into the culture of recovery, right? And moving away from what that looked like, right? Because we have a brand that we're creating in peer support. And we're creating, we're really pushing and fighting to have this position seen as a professional position. And the only way to do that is by, like I said, holding ourselves to a higher esteem in the community. So the organizations and legislature and all of those people can see that recovery is possible, that these individuals make a difference, and that the title of a certified peer support specialist is important. So I'm glad that we get to be here and present on this topic. Like I said, I hold it near to my heart, and hopefully you'll take away some new tools today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robyn. She's going to start with part one.
And I'll give a little introduction of myself too. My name's Robyn Emery. I've been working at Optum, Salt Lake County, for the last 11 years. I think it's 11 in June. Yeah, it was just almost 11 for me, almost to the day. I am the family support specialist at Optum, and I am really, Lisa was talking about some of the stuff she did before. I used to work for NAMI, and I hope you guys are familiar with NAMI, hopefully. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I kind of got my start there advocating for parents who have children with mental health issues. I have children and myself. I have a family full of people with mental health and substance use issues, so hopefully I qualify to do this. Lisa was mentioning how important this being a peer support specialist is, and how people view us. And so what we've put together today should help you in not only abiding by the laws and maybe the rules of your agency, but also hopefully it will be an important thing to you too. If one of us goes out and does something unethical or is an unprofessional member of a team on an agency's payroll, it hurts all of the peers in the state of Utah. So that's why we're going over this, because we want to make sure we all, like Lisa said, are holding ourselves to a higher standard. Because we want this to be a job that you can get with a living wage. You can support yourself on it, so that we're not just kind of sidelined. So I'm going to start off with ethics and professionalism. This is part one, and I'm going to start with the ethics part. Lisa will pick up on the professionalism after. So the objectives of this training, this first part here, is to learn about ethics and professional boundaries, and understand the role of a certified peer support specialist. And then also we're going to talk about professionalism in the workplace. Keep saying that, but okay. So, what comes to mind when you think of ethics? Is it like just rules, or what do you think of ethics? It's kind of a daunting word to me because it's very serious, it's rather technical. Basically, what it is it's a code of behavior that guide our actions at work. We all have personal ethics too. I mean, you may have personal ethic that you will never ever be dishonest with someone. That's a personal ethic. Or that you will never, you're always really, really careful to never take advantage of another person because it goes against what you really believe in. That's a personal ethic. Well, there are ethics at work that guide us. And a lot of them are very similar to the things that you personally would espouse, but they're also specifically for our work situations. Ethics can be a system of moral principles, the ethics of culture. They can be rules of conduct recognized in respect to a particular class of human actions or a particular group, etc. Professional boundaries are different. Professional boundaries refer to the limits and possibilities of how peer specialists may behave and interact with those that they're working with. So that would be I don't know what your clients, excuse me, the people that you support. Professional boundaries are going to refer to the limits in working with those people. Professional boundaries, excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my voice, but usually I just can't speak English. Professional boundaries are not rigid, but they are consistent. And they're consistent, but they're also flexible at the same time. But ethical limitations are in all situations, are set in stone. They are not flexible. So again, professional boundaries are not rigid. They're flexible, yet consistent. But ethical limitations are set in stone. They are not movable. Setting boundaries is extremely important when delivering peer-based recovery support. Limits and boundaries must be set from the beginning. So the people you're working with need to know, what are your limits? What are the boundaries that surround their relationship with you? So some factors in establishing peer boundaries: ethical limitations. Ethics are a code of behavior that guide our actions at work. They are guidelines that may affect how we act when we're not actually working. Others may see us as a representative of our employer or our work role. So when I'm at the mall and I see one of the people that I work with, they still see me. They don't see me as Robyn, the person who lives on the end of that street and has 5 kids. They see me as Robyn, the person who works for Optum. And so if I do something untoward, it's going to look bad for Optum as well as me. So ethics are something that can affect the way we act, even sometimes when we're not at work. Codes of ethics promote respect, and they forbid exploitation. All certified peer support specialists will know and abide by Utah's Peer Support Specialist Code of Ethics. So have you guys all read that, the Utah Peer Support Ethics? Everybody has? I see nodding of heads. Okay, so that's something we need to be familiar with because it is a little different than some of the other ethics in with the other people that we may be working with, the clinicians, the doctors, the nurses, those kind of people. Ours are a little bit different, so be sure that you are familiar with those. And remember, ethical limits apply in all situations and are not flexible. So personal limits. Now that refers to a level of comfort a peer experiences in sharing personal information about themselves. And that's what we refer to as disclosure. So some things to ask yourself when you're establishing your own peer boundaries, your own personal limits. Helpful questions to ask yourself would be, am I making this decision because I'm uncomfortable? Am I making this decision because I'm sure it's best for the peer? Have I asked questions and checked out with the other person? Am I denying them an opportunity or the responsibility of growing in a healthy way? Am I saying yes or no because it's hard to figure out what would be best? How might I be limiting my usefulness to this person by this decision? Right now, thought went somewhere else. How might I limit their growth by this decision? So that's something that we need to be really thoughtful of when it comes to working with people is, one of the things I was taught when I first started working with families was it was my job to work myself out of a job. I'm not meant to be there forever. Am I making decisions that will help this person grow and learn to take care of themselves? It can always be a support. They can always have friends as support. They can find other support too, but I shouldn't be their peer support for the rest of my life and the rest of their life. I should be working myself out of a job, helping them grow to where they can take care of their own. Is this something I can negotiate with the person receiving the services? And who can I check with before I make my final decision? Have you ever been, just think about this, have you ever been in a situation where you've been asked to do something that you really just didn't want to do? You didn't know how to say no. Or can you think of a time when you wanted to help but not really to the extent that they're asking for? And you end up being involved at a lot higher level than you expected or wanted. So there may be some times when working with peers that you're going to find that you have to set limits as to what you will and what you won't do. One effective way to set limits is with gentle refusal. Sometimes working with clients, I find that I always think that I used to. I've grown up a little bit, but when I very first started helping families and working with peers, I felt like I had to have the answer to everything. I had to be able to fix everything. And when I finally discovered one day that there was no fix, and I'm searching the internet and I'm trying to find something for this woman who needed something, there was nothing available. What she needed, I couldn't give her. And no one was giving it at the time, at least not here in the state of Utah. And I realized, oh my gosh, I can't fix everything. So I had to learn to set some limits and not put myself out there as the know-all, be-all, do-all, because I wasn't. I needed to learn some gentle refusal, and I didn't. It took me a while. So this particular skill, the gentle refusal plan, is a way to say no as gently as possible and still in a very, very caring way. So you're not being rude, you're not being flippant, you're not being, offish, pushing the people off and pushing them away. It helps you to say no, let your limits be heard and honored, but you're still involving the person to continue, because you continue to explore with them ways to deal with what it is they've asked of you. You're not willing to do this, but what about this? And we'll talk about this just a little bit more. So an example of, let's say that somebody you're working with says, I need to borrow $10 for groceries. Actually, we should up that. Groceries, that would mean what? A box of soda crackers and that's it? Okay. All right. They need $100 for groceries because they want to make sandwiches tonight. That's all they're getting out of it. All right. So they've come up to you and they've said, I really need money. I need to get some groceries for my kids. Okay, number one, there are issues with most companies not allowing you to do that. It is also not, it's just not a wise idea, but it's usually against policies. So instead of saying, oh yeah, sure, here, or what do you think, I made of money? You know, just rude. You let them know that you hear behind the question. So you're not just gonna say no. You're gonna say something along the lines of, wow, it sounds like you really are desperate for some money. I mean, groceries is a pretty desperate thing you don't wanna go without. So you're gonna repeat back to them what you heard them say, that they're really desperate. I can see that you're really in need. And then you're gonna set your limits or do the refusal. So we have reflection and refusal. The refusal, you would say something as clearly as possible about what your limits are. And if you choose to, you can give a reason, but you don't have to. So you might say something like, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't lend you money. Now, if you wanted to boost it a little, you can say, you know, I can't lend you money, it's against the policies of my employer and I could lose my job. Because I do know people who have lost jobs for that. And then you offer the invitation. So here we are, we just shut them down, but let's lift them back up and give them something to work with. So tell them what you are willing to do. The invitation shows that even though you can't meet that specific need that they have, you can't hand them over the money to go to the grocery store, you're still willing to help find a solution to this. So then you might say something like, well, maybe we can look at other resources that you might tap into, and then you might be able to look at a resource book or check online, find some food pantries, and help them depending on your situation. I mean, where we work, we can't give people rides, and a lot of places don't allow their peer support to give rides to people. But have you ever ridden a bus? Let's look up the bus route, and if you haven't, I'd be glad to go with you, and let's go and find some food pantries and see if we can get that need met for you so that you don't have to worry about that. But I've reflected back, I've told you that no, I can't do that, but I understand what you're saying. Well, I don't want to do I can't do that. First of all, let them know with the reflection that you understand. You understand behind the I need money. You understand that it's a desperate situation or it's a scary situation or whatever, but you understand what they said. Then do the refusal. I can't do that, but then you do the invitation. Let's look at some other options. Let's find another way for you to meet those needs. So don't let peers place conditions on your helping them. You'll find it helpful to use gentle refusal when a person makes unrealistic demands of you, when they want guarantees, if they demand advice. Remember, we don't give advice. We give options or resources, but we don't tell them what they should do. When a person asks personal questions that make you feel uncomfortable, or when a person is verbally abusive. Nobody needs to take that, so gentle refusal would be a good way to help. A person seems to continually say, yes, but, to your reflections or suggestions. Or if you just want to end the conversation. So now we're going to move on to the fun one. Spotlight on romantic relationships. Are they okay for a peer to enter into with any of their clients or people that they serve? No, they're not. And it specifically states that in our code of ethics, the Utah State Code of Ethics. It will probably specifically be stated in the rules of conduct of your business that you work for. I mean, it's going to be several places. So beyond the obvious ethical problem lies the fact that when you are in an intimate relationship with someone, you cannot perform professionally for that person also. And this is a totally different situation, but just to bring it up, I had to go help at a school meeting with a family and help their child get some help for, getting a better education. And I could stick up and say, hey, they need this, they need that, that one's not going to work. But when I had to take my own daughter, and she was my daughter, not a romantic, relationship, but somebody that was close to me, somebody that I loved with all my heart, I was totally helpless. Imagine if you were in love with a person and you had, it's just different. You can't operate professionally if you're in an intimate relationship of any kind. So if you begin to become overly involved with somebody and you find yourself attracted to somebody that you're serving, it's your responsibility to go to your supervisor and let them know that there's an issue here and that something needs to be done. Be professional. Protect yourself. Protect the person you serve. You don't know what that could do to them also. Protect your agency by ending the relationship. The bottom line is it is not allowable to engage in a romantic relationship or dating or sexual relationship with an individual that you serve. Some possible ramifications include your certification can be pulled. You will no longer have certification. Without certification, your company cannot bill Medicaid for your services, or if you're the one billing Medicaid, they will not pay if you're not certified. Your employment could be terminated. You can be personally sued. Your agency can be sued, and there can be other legal ramifications, and it's not worth it. So remember. Confidentiality, the next thing we're going to discuss here, is every code of ethics in mental health, as well as many laws, require confidentiality on the part of mental health practitioners, including certified peer support specialists. We may not be a mental health practitioner, but we are on the team that serves people, and we need to abide by the rule of confidentiality. And I was just talking to Lisa the other day about just in the community of mental health and substance use, it's a very small community. It may have thousands of people in it, but it's a very small community. And if I were to tell you a story about somebody that I know, even if I were not to tell you their name, good chance you might know who it is just by some of the things that I say in the story. And I've had that happen to me before, where I've said something about, I had this experience with a person, thinking that I was okay by just leaving out the name, and somebody said, I know her. I'm like, oh, jeez. So be careful. Even if you leave the name out, this is a small community and people will know who you're talking about. At least someone will, most likely. So good rule to remember is that personal information is to be disclosed only with a written consent, which is a release of information or an ORI of the individual receiving services. So this includes by telephone and answering machine, by fax, in person, in writing, or by email. So anything I do, and one thing that I didn't understand, and I'm going to bring it up here, is I didn't really catch on at first to the message. I'm not talking to anybody. I call and leave a message. At Optum, we had to call the clients of one of our largest providers who stopped providing service for a whole bunch of those clients, and they didn't know that was going to happen until it just happened. And we wanted to make sure that since they were having their services stopped by who they had already been seeing, that they were going to be able to get services somewhere. We couldn't just have them out there, leave them out there hanging with nothing. So we had to call every person that had been let go by this agency and check and see if they had somebody, if they'd found somebody that they could go to. If not, could we help them find somebody? And even on some occasions, we had to have them on the phone with us and call a provider and set them up with somebody on a linked line. There were thousands of those. And when we were first told that we had to all take a turn calling these places, and I probably called 300 or 400 all by myself, they said, don't leave a message if you get a message machine. Or, well, it's not a machine anymore, but yeah, if you leave a message, don't leave a message. And it was funny because at first I thought, why? Why? I mean, I'm talking to a non-person, so why does it matter if I leave that? Because you don't know who's going to get that message. If it's a family line and many people can pick up that phone and check the messages, I mean, even between a husband and wife, unless I sign something saying my husband can see my medical records, he can't. So anybody picking up that phone that's not the person that you need to talk to is hearing confidential information. So even that way. HIPAA laws, as well as state laws, protect the confidentiality and privacy of behavioral health consumers. Maintaining confidentiality guidelines. Information received in confidence by one agency or person shall not be forwarded to another person or agency without the individual's written permission. So they told me that I could get the information. They're giving me the information, and they signed a paper so that I could receive that information. I can't turn around and give it to you unless that person signs something that I can give it to you. So keep that in mind. An ROI is for one person or agency. It's not for multiples. So if you get it, it's yours only. It's not yours to share. In working with groups, the rights of each member should be safeguarded with confidentiality. The provider has the responsibility to discuss the need with each member, that they have to respect the needs of the other person, the confidentiality of other people in the group. And that's really important. We're going to talk a little bit later after the break about running support groups, and that was one of the things that we had to bring up every single time we met was confidentiality is our first rule. Anything said in this room stays in this room, and we need to make sure that let them know how important this is. It's safeguarding them as well as everyone else in the group. When using a computer to store confidential information, providers must take measures to control access. So locking the computer when you're not sitting there at it. I've noticed there's some really cool screen things that people can put on a screen. I don't know exactly a screen, I don't know what you call them, but where if I'm standing over here, I can't see what's on that screen, but if they're right in front of it, they can. So anything to safeguard that other people are not going to see that information that's on the computer. Now talk about the duty to report. So we are, as 18-year-olds, which I'm assuming everybody here is at least 18 years old, all right? In the state of Utah, you are a mandatory reporter of abuse and neglect, both to children and adults. So keep that in mind. It doesn't matter if you have a license, but it is one of our ethics that we have to abide by, confidentiality and reporting. We have to report. So we report allegations of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of any individuals to staff for the purpose of taking further action. So we're going to go to our supervisor and say, I'm dealing with this client, and there was some information that came out while we were talking about how they're being taken advantage of by someone in their family. My supervisor will then help me make that report or help me decide how to handle making that report. A lot of times people like to make the report with the person who has revealed the information. So my client that told me that they were being taken advantage, and I would sit down and do it on the phone. But I'm going to go to my supervisor first, let them know what I need to do, and then they'll guide me. When in doubt, always go with your gut. I have a lot of faith in what I call my gut, and you've heard that a lot, gut instincts, whatever. I really trust it. If I feel uncomfortable at all about not saying something, then I should say something. Get with your supervisor and assess the situation. At least talk about it, because Even if you don't have proof that something's going on, if you have a strong belief that something could be going on, you need to report it. This code, the Human Services Code, when a person, including persons licensed, and I'm not going to go into all these little numbers, nurses, anybody with a license, have reason to believe that a child has been subjected to abuse or neglect, or who observes a child being subjected to conditions or circumstances which would reasonably result in abuse or neglect, that person shall immediately notify the nearest peace officer, law enforcement agency, or office of the division. Now, it suggests in here people who are licensed, but again, I don't know the exact place where it is, but in the state of Utah, if you are 18, you don't have to have a license or be a nurse. If you are 18 and you live in the state of Utah, you are a mandatory reporter. The next one is any person who has reason to believe that any vulnerable adult has been the subject of abuse, neglect, or exploitation shall immediately notify Adult Protective Services, intake, or the nearest law enforcement agency. When the initial report is made to law enforcement shall immediately notify Adult Protective Services, intake. Adult Protective Services and law enforcement shall coordinate as appropriate their efforts to provide protection to the vulnerable adult. Now, are we going to ask the question, what's a vulnerable adult? We'll get to that. So with the mandatory reporting laws in Utah, here are the numbers that you would call. With Adult Protective Services, you can actually go online, Lisa, are we giving them any kind of handouts on this? No? Okay. You can report this, you can use this link that's listed here, and if you have issues with it, you can always contact us. Jot down a note with our information was on the very front, and I can go back during the break and put it on that if you'd like, so that you can write down our information, and we can get you this link, or you can write it down now.
This slide deck can be made available to.
Yeah. We can do that if you would like. Okay. So immediately report all suspicions of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of children. There's a 24-hour hotline, and the number is listed there. So always remember to err on the side of caution when you're dealing with issues of confidentiality and privacy. And okay. I want to go back because I didn't finish this one up. What is a vulnerable adult? That's a good question to ask because, to me that doesn't say a whole lot. It doesn't tell me exactly who that is. So an elder adult, 65 years of age or older, is considered part of that. Or an adult who has a mental health or physical impairment which substantially affects their ability to provide necessities such as food, shelter, clothing, or mental or other health care, obtain services necessary for health, safety, or welfare, carry out the activities of daily living, manage their own financial resources, or comprehend the nature and consequences of remaining in a situation of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. So this could be someone that it kind of, everybody thinks of it as, it's just anybody who's old. But it could refer to someone much younger. Those are the guidelines. So sorry, I had to run back. It's Lisa's turn. She's going to talk about the role of peer support and professionalism in the workplace.
So I forgot to mention, I feel like that's like blocking my view from you all. So I forgot to mention that we would like this to be interactive. So if while we're going through this, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to raise your hand. And we have a mic that can come around. And yes, you get to use a microphone. So yeah, please feel free. Do we have any comments or questions on ethics so far? We do have one.
about you're talking about if you're attracted to someone else that you're working with, but it works the other way too. Because I've been in situations where I could tell that that person was attracted to me. And that needs to be, because we're thinking we would never do that. It's super awkward when it's in reverse, and those cases need to be passed on to someone else right away.
Great comment. Thank you for that. For sure. Any others? Okay, so we're going to move on. And yeah, if while I'm going along, again, like I said, if you have any questions, comments, raise your hand. And Brandy, right?
Yes.
Brandy will come and give you the microphone. So, role of peer support. We're going to touch on what the role is, and then we're going to talk about professionalism in the workplace. For those of us that have taken, or for those of you that have taken our training, this is definitely going to be a refresher. So, working definition of peer support. Certified peer support specialists strive to empower individuals to achieve their hopes, their dreams, and their goals, and connect them with their personal recovery journey. A certified peer support specialist is a person who is walking a path of recovery from mental illness and or substance use disorder and is employed to assist others in their journeys of recovery. They are individuals who have received specialized training and supervision to guide and support others who are experiencing similar mental health and or substance use issues toward increased wellness. And I love this quote, and we use it a lot, from Thomas Jefferson: who then can so softly bind up the wound of another as he who has felt the same wound himself? And another definition could be of a peer support, right? Someone that self-identifies as a person who has direct personal experience living in recovery from a mental health and or substance use disorder, or an individual who has a desire to use their experience to help others with their recovery and is publicly willing as a person living in recovery for the purpose, or is publicly willing to identify themselves as a person living in recovery for the purpose of educating, role modeling, right, and providing hope to others about the reality of recovery. And that was actually taken from Florida's Peer Services Handbook. So role expectations. These are something that apply in all situations, kind of like with the ethics, right? They're not flexible when you're handed out a role expectation, which this could be found in your job description, maybe your agency's personal manuals, codes of conduct, and in supervision manuals. So again, these are not flexible. These refer to the behaviors that are expected of the employee in the role of the direct service worker by the agency. And again, role expectations, they apply in all situations. To bring up, Robyn talked about personal boundaries and how that can be flexible and how that can change. One of the examples she gave was like giving out your personal phone number. Well, I know for many agencies that is a no, right? It's in your role expectation that you do not give out your personal phone number. So that's off the table as far as a personal, professional boundary, right? The flexibility. In some agencies too, we're not allowed to transport in our personal vehicle, but in others you may be able to, right? And so again, that's not going to be a personal choice or flexible as time goes on. So things that could be helpful and not helpful in our role as a certified peer support specialist. Definitely helpful. We want to focus on individual strengths. I don't know about you all, but when I came into recovery, I didn't think I had any strengths, right? Like I hate the word broken, but I feel like I was pretty broken, right? And I didn't feel like I had any strengths, and I didn't have a cheering section, right? Like my cheering section was what we can consider frenemies, right? And so coming into recovery, it's nice to have those people in our corner that's building us up, right? And focusing on those strengths rather than, it's so easy to get caught up in focusing on a diagnosis, focusing on the labels, right? I work with so many individuals that we start working together and trying to come up with, trying to come up with strengths, and all they tend to go back into is that, oh, well, we learn about our language, right? I'm schizophrenic. I suffer with schizophrenia, right? But it's, again, they get these labels attached to them. I have a learning disability. I can't do that. Well, let's find out what you can do and try to get rid of the label, right? So focusing on strengths is very important. Listen to the people's experiences and show that people can get better. That's where our role modeling really comes into play. Accept people just as they are. And we're going to talk about like fixing or, trying to fix people or lead them down a road that we think they should go down, right? Helpful to offer people support. And then, not so helpful dwelling on problems or their limitations, not interpret their experiences, not define what getting better is, because getting better can mean different things to different people. Or offer solutions or fixes. Again, being careful with that one, right? Not helpful to necessarily come in and want to give someone the solution, although I don't know about you all, but I came into this role to help people, right? And it's not good to see people suffer, and so it's easy to jump on that fix-it wagon and want to fix people, right? And fix their problems so they don't have to suffer, but that's not always helpful. And not helpful to try to make the people behave as you think that they should. So, roles of a treatment team. If you're working on like a treatment team, these are some roles that you may see. I know like Volunteers of America, they have their ACT team, Assertive Community Treatment Team, and you're going to see this group of people along with probably others, right? But so on a treatment team, you might see a doctor or a prescriber, right? Someone that's prescribing the medication, managing the medical aspects of someone's care. You might see a nurse or even an APRN, which could also be a prescriber, and they're going to assist with the medication management, keeps an eye on medical conditions, and offers medical education. Most treatment teams have a counselor, right, or a LCSW, a licensed professional, or a social worker, or a therapist, These use a specific module to help individuals sort through challenges, and they use tools such as like CBT, DBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, and so on and so forth. And then you could have a case manager, and most teams do. And I'm not going to go down my tangent on this one, but a lot of agencies tend to use one person for both roles. And there's many reasons for that, right? Lack of funding, or sometimes it's even just a lack of education, right? Because they do cross over a lot, right? Case management and peer support, they do cross over a lot. But the one thing that's really different about the two is sharing your personal lived experience with someone, right? That's not the role of a case manager. So if you're working and you've got both hats and you're working with one individual with both hats, that's going to be kind of hard, right? To hit the peer support role and the case manager role if you're not supposed to be sharing your personal story one way or the other, right? But like I said, there are a lot of crossovers. But for those of you that have not taken our training, right, maybe this will be some helpful information for you. If your agency is asking you to wear both hats, maybe this will help you clarify between the two, right? Like, don't let one take the back seat. And from what I've heard from most people is when you're wearing both hats, peer support tends to take the back seat, right? So just being careful with that. I mean, for the most part, the easiest definition of this is a case manager is there to manage cases, right? Peer support is there to provide the support, common ground, common mutuality, right? We're sharing our lived experience, our experience, strength, and hope, which gives people hope that recovery is possible, right? Whereas a case manager really, like it says, assists people in gaining access to services and assist in tracking down the best professional services. I know I got to go through Salt Lake County Felony Drug Court as well, and I had a treatment team. And I knew, right, when I went in and met with my case manager, I knew what that was going to look like. And I can tell you, I wouldn't have wanted to have went in and to meet with her and had her start telling me her personal story. Because we had work to do, right? Like, I knew what her role is. She was there to help me connect with these services, sometimes even helping me with the phone calls. But here's where the crossover can come in, because peer support can help with that as well, right? But I knew what her role was. And like I said, I wouldn't have wanted to have went into her office and had her take up time telling me about her, because that wasn't, her part. So, also the other thing I wanted to mention, if you are working on a treatment team, more than likely there's a treatment plan in place. And if there is a treatment plan in place, that takes priority, right? So your work as a peer support should be complementary to the treatment plan, but that does take priority. So these are taken from the National Practice Guidelines for Peer Support Specialists. You can find this online. But here's what peer supporters we do, right? We provide hope. Hope is the catalyst of recovery for many people. Peer supporters demonstrate that recovery is real. Belief that recovery is possible brings hope to those feeling hopeless. Peer supporters are open-minded. Peer supporters, we meet people where they are, right? Again, we're not going to dictate their recovery to them. We meet people where they are in their recovery, even when the person's beliefs, attitudes, or ways of approaching recovery are far different from our own. Being judged can be emotionally distressing and harmful. Peer supporters are empathetic, right? Empathy is an emotional connection that is created by putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Peer supporters do not assume that they know exactly what the other person is going through. So hopefully you've heard that a time or two in your own recovery and in our field, right? Like none of us, we may have been down a similar road or in a similar situation, but to say that we know exactly how you feel, right? Probably not. Plus, is that validating to someone else? If we're having a conversation and someone's sharing with us and we say, geez, I know exactly how you feel, and then we start taking the next 10 minutes to tell them about us, right? Not so helpful. Peer supporters are respectful, so peer supporters accept and are open to differences. Each person is valued and seen as having something important and unique to contribute to the world. And we help facilitate change. Not always, do we know what that looks like on how to take a new path coming out of, maybe, a mental health disorder or addiction. Peer supporters treat people as human beings, and we remain alert, right, to practice, including the way that people treat themselves, because it could be dehumanizing, demoralizing, or degrading. Peer supporters, we are honest and we are direct, which can be difficult at times, right, that directness. Honest communication moves beyond the fear of conflict or hurting other people to the ability to respectfully work together to resolve challenging issues with caring and compassion, including issues regarding and relating to stigma, abuse, oppression, crisis, or safety. Peer support is voluntary. No one wants to be forced into, working with someone. Now, we know that sometimes this can be complicated, especially if you're involved in the court setting, right? Because a lot of times judges do push 12-step groups. Judges do, push this kind of stuff. So then a lot of times what we see are individuals coming into AA that do not want to be there, right? And it's not always helpful for those of you that are involved in 12-step groups, because you can usually tell that the person does not want to be there, right? And so it's voluntary. And I like I said, I worked in family drug court, but I now get to serve on the mental health court treatment teams. And, it's tough because, especially while we've been online, right? Because I'm not there in the courtroom as someone struggling to walk out with the individual and talk to them right then. And a lot of times if the judge doesn't push, right, because they have so much on their plate already that it's like, oh my gosh, one more appointment, not understanding what peer support is, right? And so it's really difficult to find that happy medium, like in ordering something versus kind of giving that gentle nudge, right? And so, yeah, it can be tough sometimes as far as the voluntary piece. Peer support is mutual and reciprocal. So like I said, there's no hierarchy, right? We're all on the same playing field. In a peer support relationship, each person gives and receives in a fluid, constant changing manner. This is very different from what most people experience in treatment programs, right? So like usually it's the therapist or the case manager, right? And they're helping tell people like what recovery could look like, versus as a peer support, we're walking through that recovery path with someone. Peer support is equally shared power. So peer supporters behave in ways that reflect respect and mutuality. with those they support. Peer supporters do not express or exercise power over those they serve. They do not diagnose. That's an important one, right? I know in our training we do a whole review on the different substance use disorders and the different mental health disorders, but it's just a review, right? Because it's helpful to understand the differences, right? But we're not a diagnostician, I think that's how you say it. So we do not diagnose, we do not prescribe or tell people what they should be taking, right? That's part of the treatment team. And again, peer support is strengths focused. So through peer support, people get in touch with their strengths. Like I said, it's important to have that cheerleader in your corner, right? I mean, think of a time when maybe you were down on yourself or you were down on your luck and you had someone come along that gave you that boost, right? Ooh, I don't know why, but that almost chokes me up because it's so important, right? And I've seen it, in working with Robyn, there's been times that I've had my own doubts and she can come along and she just provides that support where, holy cow, all of a sudden I feel myself thriving because someone believed in me, right? So it's so important to focus on those strengths. Peer support is transparent. So peer supporters communicate in plain language so people can readily understand, and they put on a face of recovery by sharing personal recovery experiences to inspire hope and the belief that recovery is real and it is possible. Peer support is the process of giving and receiving non-clinical assistance to achieve long-term recovery from severe psychiatric, traumatic, or substance use challenges. And it's person-driven. So again, meeting people where they are, not where we think they should be, or not what we think should be best for them, putting our personal biases aside. That was a little bit difficult for me in the beginning. I am a 12-stepper, right? I do go to 12-step programs. For me, like mine, I know for me is 100% abstinence, right? And that's what 12 steps teaches, right? And so when I was coming into this role, it was a little bit difficult for me to separate that out, right? And so it's important that we're meeting people where they are. Any comments online or questions? No? Are we awake out there?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I skipped my slide. Okay. So now we're going to talk about professionalism and professionalism in the workplace. It's very critical. This is a very important piece, right? I think sometimes we get comfortable with our employee, our coworkers, the people we're working with, right? And maybe a side comes out of us, right, that maybe shouldn't, right? So always keeping our own actions in check. Professionalism is about the characteristics, the qualities, and the behaviors you exhibit and the manner in which you conduct yourself. And I believe that Robyn mentioned it in ethics. That really applies everywhere you go. There's always eyes on you, right? There is. And your reputation can be hard to rebuild once it's damaged. And so being mindful of that. Although most are quick to forgive, but a lot of times if something stands out, it's there, right? It's hard to get rid of something once, right, it's been seen. So keep that in mind. So characteristics of professionalism, the first one is appearance. Actually, I wanted to share a quote really quick that I read on reputation. And it said, a good reputation is more valuable than money. And then when you look at like your reputation with your character, if I take care of my character, my reputation will take care of itself. So both are equally important. So with our appearance, a professional is neat in appearance, meets or even exceeds company's dress code, and pays special attention to appearance when engaging in various settings. So we actually went out and we did this training with an organization and brought this piece up. And it was there's some different views on this, right? On how our appearance and our dress code, right? Some people believe that they don't want to walk into a place and feel maybe too professional or that it could be intimidating, right? If you're too dressed up. And so they dress down. And I already kind of mentioned earlier the difference between the culture of recovery and the culture of the addiction world, right? Like we want to make that difference. And so one person had made the comment about that I want to feel like I'm on the same level, so I dress down. But then another individual spoke up and said he always wears dress slacks and a button-up shirt. And he says he can tell the difference in how peers relate to him. And he said he can see a change in how they start to carry themselves because he's role modeling what it looks like to step out of that culture, right? So it's important. And then your demeanor. So your demeanor, it should reflect confidence, but not cockiness, right? Be polite and well-spoken, whether you're interacting with peers, other peers that you're working with, your coworkers, whoever it is that you're interacting with. And just because you might feel like you're an expert in your field, it does not earn you the right, to treat others with disrespect or that they're less than you, right? So keep that in mind. And also with your demeanor, right, it doesn't necessarily give us the right to call people sweetie or, those kind of slang terms. And if you know that's something about yourself that you do ask, right? Like mention it. Geez, I have a tendency to address people like this. Like, is that going to offend you? Always communicate. And then reliability. Huge. I don't know about you all, but when I was in addiction and someone needed help and I told them I'd be there in 10 minutes, they'd be lucky if I made it there in 2 days, right? So reliability is important. Be someone that people can count on. If you say you're going to do something, do it, right? Like that was one of the very first things I learned in recovery was, right, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And that has stuck with me. Respond to people promptly and follow through on commitments in a timely manner. That also can portray on your company and the organization you're working with too, right? If I've got meetings on my calendar and I'm supposed to lead a meeting, right, and it's online, and I show up at 5 minutes after, and people, at some point people might just be like, wow, do I have the right link? Is this meeting even happening, right? And so being reliable, if I'm leading a meeting and I'm the one that's hosting online, I typically will join about 15 minutes early, right? And at least start letting people in, and then you can let them know in the chat or whatever, right? Like, we're just waiting for others to join or whatever. That way they know that someone's there, right? That they're just not off floating in air somewhere, or it's important to be reliable. So be someone that people can count on. And then competence. So become an expert in your field. Continue, always educating yourself. And with those that are certified, it is part of our certification, right? It expires every 2 years, and we are expected to keep up on CEUs, or continuing education units. 20 hours, that's all they're asking is 20 hours for 2 years, right? And then it's broke up into specifics. So ethics, which those of you that are certified, you're going to get all the credits you need through this. But I would challenge yourself, don't stop there, right? There's conferences, there's webinars, Doors to Wellbeing. If you've never heard of Doors to Wellbeing, go on and register for that. They have a seminar or a webinar every month on different topics, and they can apply to your CEUs. Awesome. Office of Substance Use and Mental Health, I'll get that down. They also offer a monthly webinar to where you can get your CEUs filled that way. So I don't know about you, but if I'm not learning, I totally believe that the day I stop learning is the day that I'll probably die, right? And so keep pushing yourself, right? There's so much information out there, and things are constantly changing and updating. Yes?
What's the crossover between us and NAMI? If I watch a NAMI, go through a NAMI course or a NAMI presentation?
So the question was, what's the crossover with NAMI if you were to watch one of their webinars or a seminar or something from NAMI, correct? So I'm not part of the division or the office of that, awesome, but I would say that definitely would count. And online, it's still under DSAMA, I think, Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health website. I guess that's all going to transfer over as of July 1. But if you were to go on right now, it's still under DASAMA, D-A-S, that. They have everything that you need. There's like a sample tracking sheet for those that are certified. Print that up, and I keep that pinned by my computer, so every time I complete something, there's a spot that will say when the date, the name of it, who presented, right, what category it was in, and how many hours. And then if a certificate is produced at the end, I will print that certificate or some kind of form of proof that I attended, and I keep that together. And while we're on that topic, I might as well just finish and say that once your 2 years is up and you submit that all you're required to submit is that sample tracking sheet. However, make sure you keep those certificates or the proof of attendance, because they do random audits. And so in the event you're audited, you have all that information on hand. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, NAMI's having their annual conference next week, and it is virtual, if anyone's interested.
Okay, he's announcing that NAMI is having their national conference next week, and it is virtual. So for anyone interested, and yes, that would be definitely a good spot to pick up some CEUs for your peer certification. Thank you for that. And I'm guessing all that information could probably be found on NAMI.org or something.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so ethics. This is a characteristic of professionalism. I see Rob smiling.
Yes, NAMI.org.
NAMI.org, I got it right. $15?
$15? Yeah, super cheap.
Super cheap to attend a huge conference.
Right, just heard NAMI.
So it sounds like NAMI has a table out there too.
We do, we're right here.
Perfect, thanks Rob. Awesome. Okay, so ethics comes up again and as a characteristic of professionalism. So professionals adhere to their code of ethics, and I know Robyn mentioned where you can find that. Again, it's still on the SAMA's website until they switch over to Awesome, July 1st. If you are not familiar with these, I would strongly suggest to go on and print out a copy, and I keep this by my desk, right? Because sometimes we forget, right? We forget like what our expectations are as a certified peer support specialist. Again, how important it is that as we're creating this brand, right? So go on and print them out if you haven't already and you're not familiar with them. So as a professional, display ethical behaviors at all times. Again, I know for me, I'm seen as Lisa with Optum. No matter how much I think I want to separate myself from Optum, right? People still see me as a representative of Optum. And so I have to be careful. And what about this notion of social media? What about all the 2 years that we just went through with all of the political and, well, that's still all happening, but, right, I have to keep myself in check, because when COVID first hit and we were all isolated, I'll tell you, I fell off my values and my morals a little bit, and I was probably posting a few things I shouldn't, right? And it was all out of just emotional tension, right? Everything going on, everything built up, I'm isolated. But I can tell you right now, all of a sudden, either I was unfriending, nice Facebook, right? Either I'm unfriending or I've noticed people have unfriended me. And so, again, there's that reputation. All it takes is one thing sometimes to stick in someone's mind, right? And it takes a minute to earn that back. So, again, being careful, because eyes are on us, and people are everywhere. So be careful with that. And then maintaining our poise. As a professional, maintain your poise even when facing a difficult situation, right? There's nothing like losing your cool, which can be easy to do. And we talk later this afternoon, we're going to talk about de-escalation. What is escalation and de-escalation tactics and techniques? And part of that is knowing ourselves, right? Knowing our hot spots and knowing our triggers. So knowing how to keep our poise is important. And then, if you are challenged or questioned, state your case in a calm and structured manner and keep it factual, clean, and to the point. Phone etiquette. I'm sure many of you have phone conversations, whether it's maybe you're doing your peer work via phone, or I know with me, I have a lot of phone conversations with many organizations out there, right? with treatment teams, right? I sit on a lot of different clinical staffings, right, on phone or even online, right? Since so much things have moved to online. And so there's an online etiquette piece in here too, right? Like what's going on in the background while we're online, right? Are we smoking online? I would hope not. Just different things like what's going on while our camera's on, right? Hopefully you stay dressed, and if you're not, make sure the camera's off. I don't know if that's happened to anyone, but and then we sit at home, right? We got a dress top up top, and then we're in our sweats, and then we stand up, and anyway, so just being mindful of our etiquette, right? And when we're on the phone, right, as a professional, phone etiquette is also important to remember. Always identify yourself when you're answering the phone, the company that you're with, and the title. I don't know how many times I've called someone and I get hello. Whoa, who am I calling, right? I almost want to hang up because it's just weird. So make sure you're identifying yourself. And then written correspondence, a ton is done through email. I don't know about you all, but I know I email a lot. And what it is, it's a paper trail. It's a written trail, that people can usually keep it, right? And so if you're representing yourself poorly and your organization poorly, it's a paper trail, right? It can be found. So it is important to take care of what you say and how you say it. We're all in this world too of all these emojis, right? Or sometimes wanting to capitalize words, or right? These are all things to be mindful of. Now, to put a smiley face every now and again, I've learned how to do the semicolon, something, parenthesis, and it will give me a smiley face, right? A smiley face here and there, probably not so bad, right? But at the end of a thing, if you're going to put a heart and praying hands and smileys and whatever, probably not so professional, right? So being mindful of that. Keep your tone professional, polite, and formal. If you have spell check too. Seriously, there's been times, and Robyn can attest to this, that I'll be sitting down trying to write out some email to some big executive somewhere, and it'll take me 2 hours because I'll have to reread it, make sure a comma's in the right place, or that I'm using were and was correctly. If you've never heard of Grammarly, it's a perfect thing to get your hands on, because Grammarly will help do it for you, and I learn as I go with Grammarly, right? So just important things to keep in mind and tools that you may be able to use in the future. So the last two of characteristics of professionalism, organizational skills. Very important, but don't come and look at my home office because I'm definitely not a good example of this organization piece, right? But your work area should be neat and organized. You should always be able to quickly and easily find what is needed. So even though I'm not organized, I can find what I need though, because I know right where it's at. Accountability, be accountable for your actions at all times. If you make a mistake, own it. It's okay, right? We're not perfect, and no one expects us to be. And the only time that I usually find myself doing this is if I've got an insecurity going on inside, that I think I need you to think that I know what I'm talking about, or that I know it all, right? And so it comes across wrong. So if you make a mistake, own it. It will definitely give you respect. And then lastly, remember, professional is not a label that you give yourself. It's a description and hope others will apply to you. And that came from David Maister. And all of these characteristics came from a LinkedIn post on 10 characteristics of professionalism. Okay, so qualities of professionalism. So the first one, the ability to learn. And I already mentioned, I firmly believe for me that if the day that I stop learning is the day that I pretty much probably become non-existent, right? And so our ability to learn. And we can learn through agility in 5 different areas. So mental, people, change, results, and self-awareness. With the mental agility, this includes things like being able to think problems through, right? Stop before reacting. Learn how to respond rather than react, right? Be able to think the problems through from a fresh point of view and are comfortable explaining your thinking to others. And I know I'm going to mention here in a minute, I'm a little bit jumping ahead, but our old supervisor, Julie Hartle, she is so great. We have a mood mood scale. And right in the middle is remain curious. And she's always reminding me, remain curious, right? So if there's a situation I'm in and I'm feeling heated and I'm feeling like I have the answer, I need to tell you that I'm right, or whatever, right? Remain curious. I love this statement, right? We're all fighting a battle no one knows nothing about. And so I love that, remain curious. So ability to learn with people through agility. People who know themselves learn from experience and are cool and resilient under the pressures of change. And then change. People who are curious have a passion for ideas and engage in skill building activities. Results. People who get results under tough conditions inspire others to perform beyond normal and exhibits the sort of presence that builds confidence in others. People can mirror and reflect our mannerisms, right? People can pick up on that. And that's what I love about support groups, right? Is I can go and I can hear how it's working for others. And I pick up on those tools, right? And then self-awareness. People who are reflective and know themselves well and understand their capabilities and their impact on others. Believe it or not, we do have the power to make or break people, right? We have the power to help lift someone up or tear someone down. And I would hope that we're that person that's helping build somebody up, right? And then conscientiousness is another quality of professionalism. So reflection of dependability and reliability. We've talked about those. Interpersonal skills. Work as a team player, right? Like, it's so easy, I know, for me to get in the habit of just do. I've got to do it all on my own and just always saying yes and not asking for help when there's help, right? I've gotten pretty good at, I think, now turning to Robyn and being like, hey, Robyn, I need your help. I can't do all of this by myself. And she's more than willing to take some of it on, right? And then it frees up some of my time so I can give more of myself to what it is that I'm doing, right? And so work as a team player. Adaptability, again, the adaptability to change. Things change, like I said, processes change, jobs change, positions change, markets change, leaders change, right? Everything, it's inevitable. Everything is always changing, so become adaptable. And then integrity. I love this. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching, right? And when I'm doing the right thing when no one is watching, it's practice to do the right thing when people are watching. And then honesty, always act openly. Respect, maintain a respectful attitude to others at all times, even during stressful times. Am I at 2:45? Is that what I'm?
It's 2:28 right now.
I know, but do I have till 2:45?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Well, I don't know. Do y'all want to be here till 6 or 7 tonight? Probably not. Okay, so respect, maintain a respectful attitude to others at all times, even during stressful times. Take that moment to stop, take that breath, right? Think before, again, reacting. Let's learn how to respond. Yeah, Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
I'm just, when I hear this kind of, I feel them as expectations of me. And then I get anxious. And as a peer, that's not the best because then I tend to hide. It's important for me to be professional, but given my story of recovery, I think there is another piece underneath that is important to think about professionalism and behaviors of professionalism, because from being a garbage piece, which I was, to become a role model, oh my gosh, it's a long path. So let's talk a little about those in-betweens in which I understand not only that I can make mistakes, that I need to take responsibility for my work and my actions, but really, what is the kind of change I need to go through in my, not only my behaviors, but my soul, my mind, my being, my own process of recovery. Can we talk about that?
So I guess what I hear you saying is that we're all just maybe not right here, right, to where we have all these concepts, but that it took us a period of time to get here. Is that what I hear you saying? Yeah. No, and that is true, for sure. Right? For the purposes of this conference, we would hope that most of you have been through these changes, right? And that's why we're here today. I would say probably the majority of you are certified, and to become certified, we have that expectation or guideline that you have been in recovery for a year of sustained recovery, right? And so I would say most of us have walked through those changes, but if not, we're all peers to each other and all peer support to each other. But Thurs is absolutely right? I didn't step into this role overnight either, and all of a sudden have all these tools. It took time. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So yeah, if there's people in the audience that, you're not quite feeling like you're grasping all this or that you're not quite here yet, that's okay too, right? We're all at different levels. But so hopefully though, you'll walk away with some tools, some new knowledge, right, when we walk away from the presentation today. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Any other comments? Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. I don't know if I got it. Can you hear me? It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. You always have something you can learn. There's always, and you're at a certain level. Because I'm really good at being respectful to other people doesn't mean I can learn to do it better. I mean, you always can improve in whatever you do, and so don't ever think, oh, well, I've got all that down, so I'm perfect, because we're not. We're always in a place where we can learn something and do something more.
Thank you for those comments. Yes.
Thank you. This is weird. I look for opportunities to be humbled, and when I have those opportunities, it's not pleasant experiencing something you did wrong and being faced with that, but what I've learned is the most valuable part is to be grateful for that experience so that you can be aware of what you can improve on next time and do differently. So I just wanted to share that. That's a very important piece is being humble and appreciating that moment instead of feeling overcome by the shame.
Thank you for that.
I would also say that relying on your team, because you're obviously there because your team sees something in you and you're valuable to them. And it's okay to speak up if you're struggling with something or you need help or you need a little extra advice. I rely on my team a lot, and I'm not afraid to say, like, I need help in this area. So I would definitely just say reaching out, because that's what we're teaching our peers, right? Reach out if you need that extra, and it's remembering that sorry, my brain gets going so fast, you know what I'm saying? It's remembering to also exercise what you're teaching, right? So rely on your team, because you're there because they see something valuable in you. So keep doing that.
Awesome. Again, back to teamwork, right? Definitely. I mean, I know I go to Robyn and we have a whole team that I can run to too, so that is important.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi,
Robyn. Yeah, I'm speaking for myself here, but my biggest strength is my story and what I've been through over 40 years. That is, to me, that's what gives me, that empowers me personally. And, if I can communicate that to people, not take it over, not use my story and overwhelm everybody, but that's my strength. And, that's the whole reason I became a CPSS, is to share that. And and learn along the way. So, you know, I think that just you've had the experience, you've been through it. Now each one of us are a little bit different. It's not we're not you know, special. You know, because everybody's has a different story, but I think the goal is the same. So that's what, you know, keeping that in mind, I think is really good.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and as I'm standing up here doing this presentation, I don't even try to put off too that I know it all, right? Like, I have been doing this for a minute, but again, if I stop learning, right? And I love the humble piece. So yeah, thank you guys for your comments. Okay, so then let's see. I think communication is where we left off. So using good manners when engaging with others. Speak clearly when we're speaking with others or communicating with others in a language that others can easily understand. Act courteously. Listen to others when they are talking or explaining. Listening is really important, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the second section. Again, be careful of your language and your written language and your written communications. One other thing I wanted to just point out, I'm not sure, I know I didn't know this when I first started with Optum until someone told me, but if you're sending out a mass email, like to, I'd say maybe 20 or more, maybe even less than that, I mean, depending on the content, and it's an email that you don't need everyone responding to, there's an option of BCC, which is a blind copy. And so what it does is it'll go out to all of the people you need it to go out to, but when they respond, it only comes back to you. And so, I mean, think about that. If you've sent out an email with 20 plus people on it, and all of a sudden they start replying, and all these people are just being bombarded with emails, right? Like, that can get overwhelming. So just a tool to know that there is this option of BCC, blind copying people on an email. If you're not familiar, I'm sure someone on your team using teamwork could show you that. Next, time management. Again, take responsibility for your work and your actions. I'm a firm believer, for me, if I'm not early, I'm late. Is kind of something that I go off of. I'm also the type that I don't like to feel rushed, right? If I'm all of a sudden late and I'm all anxious, right, then I'm going to show up anxious. Right? And so taking that time to make sure I'm early to things so I don't have to have that anxious piece. And again, teamwork, work well with others. And then the last pieces of behaviors of professionalism: commitment, apply dedication and positive action, integrity, again, doing the right thing at all times. And if not, right, learning from our mistakes, learning from our lessons in life. Communication, again, use good manners when engaging with others, and essentially being professional is about giving your best at all times, and your best is going to change from time to time. For those of you that are not familiar with the 4 Agreements, beautiful book, right? So, you know, there may be days that I'm not quite on target, you know, and so my best is going to look different that day than a day that I'm really feeling on my game, right? So always giving your best at all times. Think about how your behavior will be perceived by others, and make sure to understand and follow company codes of conduct where they exist. I'm constantly trying to, you know, when I'm in conversations, to take a minute and kind of reflect, how is this going to be taken if I say it? Is it necessary that I say it? Is it? And this was actually said in our last peer support training, that, yeah, does it need to be said right now? Does it need to be said by me? Right? So sometimes, like, just running things through my head before I say something, right, is important. And then lastly, with this section, so I already touched on this piece. Sometimes I get ahead of myself, but dress the way you want to be addressed. And again, keeping in mind, right, there are the different cultures. I know I dressed differently when I wasn't doing well, right? When I was stuck in the world of addiction, my dress looked differently than it does today. And again, just really, it's just keeping in mind, like, no one's telling you how you should live your life or how you should dress or what you should do. However, in this role that we're creating, this brand for a professionalism, right? Having peer support seen as a professional position, it's important, right? And so when we're going to put ourselves in this role, in the community, in the limelight of organizations, It's different than if I'm just on my own personal time, not holding this brand, right? So that wraps up this section. Do we have any other questions, comments? And we'll move into a break, but we do have a few minutes for comments or questions.
Treats to work, or you're not allowed to, can you show appreciation for someone that's, two questions, that's the first. Can you show appreciation to somebody by giving them a gift card to Starbucks or something? And what about bringing things to the office?
So I'm not sure I quite caught the first question.
There are some of us that like to bring treats. Is that unprofessional?
Well, I know I bring treats to work. And a lot of our coworkers bring treats to work. Now, the idea of a gift card, are you talking like as an employee appreciation to an employee, or to like a peer we're working with?
The person you're working with.
So that would fall under like our code of ethics, maybe even role expectations. I think in our code of ethics it mentions anything of significant value, like a gift as defined as anything of significant value. So then it's like defining what does that look like as far as significant value. I think mostly kind of a rule of thumb is $5 or less. But
Inflation. It also depends on the agency you work for, what their policies are.
yeah, like was mentioned, it really like your job expectations, your job role, what your organization puts out. I know Robyn has a story she always tells that they did, I think when she was NAMI? Oh, Optum, that's right. She was doing something anyway, and someone really appreciated it, and they gave her a $25 gift card to Cold Stone ice cream. And so she was like, "Ooh, do I take this?" And she happened to call our human resources to ask them, and they were like, "Wow, we've never been asked this before. Hold on." And they went and asked someone else, and they came back and they said, "Enjoy your ice cream." So, I mean, it really does depend on the organization, but I think our code of ethics says anything of significant value. So, yeah, checking with your organization, what's the definition of significant value?
Is a gallon of milk significant value?
As of today, yes. She said, is a gallon of milk significant value? And I would say today, yes.
Or a gallon of gas?
Oh, definitely a gallon of gas. Okay. Any other last comments, questions? So we are going to take a break.